Hey, what's going on, guys? It's the kid that cares about his eye health, back with another video on the C++ tutorial series. Alright, so today, guys, what I have in mind, based off of the title that you already saw, is that we're going to be making the calculator app. I asked you guys to make this about 6 months ago, at the end of the episode 3, and it's basically just a way to compile all the knowledge that we already have and turn it into an application, and also a step in a direction I want to start taking these videos, which is looking at programming more from the sort of problem solving side and less about how to exactly use C++. Because to be honest, based off my own experience, I do not consider myself to be a whiz at C++ and know all of these super weird tricks that it has to offer, because it is a very extensive language that has a lot of content to get into, which I do plan on getting into. But I would first like to focus more on the problem solving side of programming and how we're going to approach a problem, how we're going to break it down into steps, and how we're going to turn those steps into code. Okay? And it's really not that difficult to do, and I have faith in all of you guys. So anyway, with that aside, the videos coming up are going to be a little bit different, but without wasting any more time, let's just get into writing a calculator app. So for this assignment, if you want to call it that still, which I will say first, I'll stop one more time. If you haven't tried to do it yet, try to do it just one more time. All right. All I want you to do is take two numbers from the user, a choice of operator, and then display to the user their two numbers with whatever operator in between them equals, and then the answer to the inputted data. Okay. And yeah, so give that one more try. Pause the video here, bang your head against your desk a couple times, try to figure it out, and then if you still don't got it, come back to this, and then we'll try to work it out together. As per usual, we're going to start with our using namespace std, just to help us not have to write std over and over again when we're doing cout and cin. Hopefully it's not too rusty, this sort of syntax, but you'll get the hang of it as we keep going. All right. And we're going to first, before we even start coding, we're going to look at the problem that we have, and that's make a calculator. Okay, and we're going to break this down into steps, into what we have to do. Now, luckily for you, I already kind of did that for you if you were listening a little bit ago. I said we're going to have to get input from the user, all right, regarding the two numbers and the operator. Okay. And then all we're going to have to do after that is evaluate the data, evaluate the data, and output the answer. Okay, so it may seem like we're kind of throwing a couple stuff together, but with something that's this simple, if you really want to, you could break it up into more steps. But with something that's kind of a little bit simpler to understand, it shouldn't be too difficult to just take these two steps and then go from there. Okay, so the first thing we're going to figure out is get input from the user. So we need to get two numbers and an operator. Okay, so let's make some variables for to assign the two numbers that we get from the user into. So we're going to say the first num for an int, and the second num for an int. Now, mind you, I decided to use integer values. This is kind of something that you should think when you're setting up this stuff is the data or the variable type that I choose going to have repercussions in the future? So for this example, I decided to use integers. Now, you could have decided to use something like floats or doubles instead, because remember, if we were to do integer division, something like, let's say, 15 divided by 7, all right, the code's going to print out a 2. Okay, now had we saved this as floats, it would have printed out something like, I don't even know, 2.2 maybe, 2.14 or something, I don't know. But it would have had the decimal after it. Okay, so we're making the choice here, and we're saying we're just going to do integers, just to keep it simple. If you want to make your app a different way, go ahead, use floats, but it's important to just recognize what the drawbacks are to using a certain variable type. And don't fret about this too hard in the beginning, especially with smaller projects like this, because it's not too hard to go back and rewrite your code. Okay, don't be scared to delete your code. Okay, it's a very important thing you gotta learn early. Don't be scared to delete your code. All right, and now we're going to choose something to save our operator choice into, and I decided to use a char, and we'll go more into this more in the rest of this video. But the thing is the only data or the only input somebody should be giving is let me see, plus, minus, plus, minus, an asterisk, or an X if you want to instead of doing an asterisk, or a division sign. Okay, so all of these are only one character long, so there's really no point to using a string instead of a car variable, because it's only going to be one character long anyway. All right, now could this have repercussions later on down the line? Possibly, but I'm not going to worry about that, because as far as I'm aware, I only have these 4 choices. Okay, so all right, so now we have the variables. Now we're going to need to get the input from the user. So you can make this look as pretty as you want, or don't do that at all. All right, completely up to you, but I'm going to make a little title for my calculator app. All right, doesn't have to be anything super pretty. All right, we're going to use some of our end L's, we're going to use some of our couts, okay? And we're going to ask the user to please input your first number, okay? And we're going to in the first number. All right, so that doesn't seem too difficult. We've done some stuff like this. All right, then we're going to ask to please input your second number. Okay. And we're going to in the second number. All right, and now I'm going to ask them, what operation would you like to do? Okay. And completely up to you how you want to phrase this stuff and whatnot. Normally please is a nice thing to say to people because they don't want to get upset when they're using your program, you know. So I like to use stuff like please and kind of just using your manners when you're getting input and stuff like that, or asking the user to do something. But that goes into a whole nother talk. Okay, so now we have our inputs, we have some date or some words, so people know what they're inputting, right? And if we go ahead and try to run this, we could see we get please input your first number, 15, please input your second number, 29, and what operation would you like to do, plus, and the program just ends. So now we need to move on to step 2. So we did step 1, so we could maybe do something like a little pound sign, so we know we did that step already. Now we're on to step 2. We need to evaluate the data and output the answer. Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to evaluate this data. So what do we have here? We have 2 integer values that need to have some operation performed on them, and we have the operator choice that they're going to use. Okay, so here's one way that I thought of how we could approach this problem, or this step, is first we can make an integer for the final answer. Okay, this is where we're going to save whatever the product, quotient, difference, or sum is between these 2 numbers. Okay, so that's what we're going to save the information into, and we'll use that later when it comes to outputting. And then we're going to make a couple if and else if statements, okay, and maybe even an else statement, but we probably won't need one. Okay, and what we're going to put in this is we're going to evaluate what operator choice they decided to use. So we're going to say if operator choice equals this is the comparator to seeing if 2 things are equal to each other, not just one equal sign. And remember, since we're using the car or the char variable type, we have to use single quotes. Okay, we're going to say if it equals plus, then do something. Okay, do stuff. Okay, 4 separate possibilities, right, on how we're going to evaluate. So we got one for plus, minus, divide, and division. Okay, and you could definitely do these in whatever order you want. All right, so let's talk about the stuff we're going to do in here. Well, first we have to do the operation. We have to save to the final answer whatever it is that we're doing to the 2 numbers. So all we have to do here is basically say final answer equals our first num plus second num. Okay? And then we have final answer. And then all we're going to do from there is just see out. We're going to say first num plus, or we can actually even do it a slightly better way I just thought of. Let's say operator choice. Now the problem with this is, I actually just realized as I'm typing it that we won't get the space. So it might look a little bit cramped, but for this example I'm going to do it that way anyway. Oop. Keyboard's being a little funky. Second num. Okay, and then we're going to say equals, and then we'll say final answer. Okay. So there we go. So right there, if all they do, if they want addition between two numbers, bam, we save the final answer as the sum of these two. Okay, and then we see out first num, operator choice, second num, and then final answer. All right. So the only thing we have to change for this is just minus, divide, and multiply. Okay? And since the operator choice already deals with writing out what operator choice we're going to do, then we don't even have to worry about that. So let's try this again. 15, 28, and a plus sign, and we get 15 plus 28 equals 43. So woohoo! You just did it. You just wrote your first program. All right? And that was only about 44 lines of code, even less if you didn't do some of the comments, or even less if you decided to take out some of the white space. But remember, it's important to definitely make your code readable, so if somebody else or you in the future decides to look at your code, you could still understand it. All right, so let's quickly talk about the takeaways from this little project that I really want you to keep in mind, or how you're going to save your information. Remember, we decided to do integers instead of floats or doubles. This might come to bite us later in the future, such as, watch this, right? And we talked about this earlier. 17 divided by 2, all right, we're doing division. It equals 8. It's not just 8. It's 8. It should be 8.5. But because we decided to do integers, our program isn't really set up to deal with that kind of stuff. So this is just all sort of stuff that you should keep in mind. Also, we're using the car variable type. I wanted to show this as well, because sometimes you get problems in your code that you don't really understand, right? So let's say, for example, we decided to do plus and equals. Well, how about it? It actually did work. Now, this might not always be the case. If we did equals plus, it definitely wouldn't work. What if we tried saving an equals sign into our second number? Look it. So the way that we're even handling input isn't great, but that's okay. For a program that's simple like this, you know, I don't want to overcomplicate it and ask you to verify input and make sure that it's a valid choice. All right? That's something we could get into the future. But just be aware of how you're saving your data. All right. Keep in mind how we did this. All right, with the whole problem to steps to code process. All right, this is something you're going to be working on pretty much your entire life. It's something that I still even have problems with today. All right, how you approach the problem, how you turn it into simple steps, all right, and then how you turn those steps into code that works. It's a huge process, and it's basically the spirit of programming. So it's not always easy to know how to do this stuff, all right? You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, all right? Programming is also a lot about iterative design, or iterative. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. The point is we could go back to a program like this and we can make changes to it to make it better. Look at, just from making this video, I just discovered that a much better way or a much cleaner way to write this code to reduce redundancy would just to do this. Look at, we don't have to have that written out every time because it's always going to look the same way when it comes out at the end of the day. All right, we could even do something crazy like this, all right, just to make our code a little bit tighter. Okay, maybe we don't want it to take up 44 lines. Look at, we got it down to 38. All right, shaved off a little bit of room. Okay, so there's all these small things you can do, but there would be no way that I would. Well, there could be. If you wrote a million calculator apps, you might remember this information. But here's the thing. The whole point of iterative design is that you first do your first iteration of the program. And you look back after you have already done it and you see where you made mistakes, where can I make stuff less redundant? Where can I make stuff look cleaner? You know, there's all this sort of stuff that you could do. Maybe I thought num doesn't really make that much sense because maybe someone's thinking that I'm talking about feeling numb, okay? So maybe I should change it to number, okay? And I could change that everywhere else in the application. It's just stuff like that, all right? It's what makes sense in your head and what will hopefully make sense in other people's head when they come to read your code, all right? There's a lot of stuff to take into consideration here, but the thing is it's just going at it step by step, all right? Kind of keeping little notes in your mind, and you will eventually develop this sort of programming-oriented mindset, okay? So hopefully the video wasn't too long. It's probably something close to, under 20 minutes, so we did pretty good, I think. And yeah, the episodes that come out after this are definitely going to be a little bit different, I think, from now on. I really want to push problem solving more so than just how do you do C++, okay? Because hopefully by the end of this series, if you really wanted to, you could go out and you could go ahead and pick up something like Java, or you could pick up something like Python, and just by learning how they are written, you can apply concepts that you already understand about programming to those languages, all right? So anyway, guys, thanks for watching another video. If you made it this far, maybe leave it a like, because I guess the video isn't that bad. I don't know. Do whatever you want. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.